Hey, can you hear me?
Hello. Hey, you hit that pickup call pretty quickly. Like with the trained efficiency of, one might say, an IWW organizer.
Yes, indeed. That's one of the things we train with you people on.
The quick
We have you
call,
sit
where
in
you
front of the computer.
quick snatch it up real quick.
Yep.
Okay. So you actually came on the stream some time ago beforehand, and now you're back. What made you come back for the rematch?
Well, I came back because to reintroduce myself, my name's Hot Cow, Hotkow, if you want to spell it. Pronouns he, him. I am an officer in the Industrial Workers of the World, the Connecticut branch. And I wanted to come back on because after I watched the video back, I had a friend who saw it. My brother also saw it too, and they said, "Hey, check it out." He came out pretty good. So I watched it, and I noticed there were a lot of questions that people in the chat, both the stream and all the other stuff, asked that it would have been nice to get a chance to answer, or
Hmm.
for their sake to answer. Plus, there's been a whole, bunch of other stuff. So if you or your, lovely, lovely followers have any questions, whether it's about the IWW, unions, anything else, shanties, who knows, feel free to ask. I'll answer the best of my ability. Now, again, I'm speaking as from my experiences. I am not officially speaking on behalf of my branch or the IWW as a whole.
Hmm.
So make sure you try to separate those opinions, but I will let people know how, we go about things.
Right, you're not speaking as a representative. You're simply, uh, uh, you have the skill, the talent, the skill. You, you know, uh, you have information to share with us. So I think I'll take it away for a bit, and then the buffoons in chat can have their shot, if that works with them, and I know it will. Um, what tips do you have for talking to your coworkers about starting a union? How do you get that off the ground?
Well, so this is one thing about what we do in we do a training, organizer training, and we go through AEIOU. I'll bring that up a lot, probably tonight, which is agitate, educate, inoculate, organize, union. And one of the things about that training, we try to get everyone in on that. And it's hard. I wish we could just put the training online so people could watch it. But we have people practice talking to other people, figuring out how to get involved, bring stuff up. One big key tip I will bring up, and any IWW member worth their salt who's at a training will bring this up. Never ever start talking to your coworkers about organizing at work, not on the shop floor. Doesn't matter about the boss having cameras or anything else. Someone may overhear it and the talk gets around. So try to find a way to meet that coworker outside of work to talk about something. Carpooling is a really good example. I know someone who what they did is they told everyone that their car was broken and they wouldn't be able to get at it looked at until the weekend. So they used every day of the week to carpool with a different coworker so they could kind of, test the waters with each one of them. And a lot of it's the agitating is very simple. It's like, man, I wish scheduling wasn't so frustrating. I wish they gave us some heads up, on some of this. And it's like bitching. You don't want to get people to just vent and be overly stressed, but you want to, have people go, yeah, it's really fun. I hate it. I was about to go to a concert with a friend and I had to go in and, work the other night. And it was really frustrating because I thought I had the night off. And you go, oh, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I wish that we could just, get them to set that up and have, Ron, say the manager or whatever, get that established.
Hmm.
And little things like that. You don't have to jump into everything hardcore, but test the waters, see what's going on, kind of probe a bit, and then start, going off of that, seeing what are the issues that each one of your coworkers has a problem with. There may be something that you didn't realize was an issue at work that maybe three of your other coworkers deal with. So understanding and having those conversations helps you understand and go, oh, maybe this is something we can definitely organize around. Uh, Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, for sure. And a lot of that makes sense. Obviously, there has to be, by design, a lot of tiptoeing because reprisal is a real concern whenever you're advocating for a union, even though it is technically illegal to fire a person for such a reason. it obviously still happens. So,
Of course. Most people are, I want to say, except for Montana, people are at-will employees unless you're at a unionized workplace. So they will always find a reason to do this. I actually had to tell one of our new members, we do a little onboarding process, and I talked to them, and they were talking about the union openly at the workplace, and I was like, that's going to get you fired. And if you're on thin ice already, they'll find another reason. They'll come up with something saying you didn't put the salt, the sugar packets in right and consistently, or
right,
some
right, right.
bullshit,
Yeah.
and they'll find a reason.
That's the
They
classic
don't,
one, by the way. They love
yeah,
getting you with the salt and sugar packet one.
yeah, some bullshit like that, and you just got to be careful. And they will always, if they're smart, they won't give it that away. They'll make up some excuse and they'll do it that way. So
Yeah. And sometimes they're not that smart either. I personally know people who have been fired for causes that are illegal, and their bosses just admit to it.
yeah,
I actually knew a person in college who got fired specifically because, or at least their boss said, that they had enough women around the workplace. Like, just an astonishing. I mean, truly, I almost admire it. The forthcomingness of that particular individual, but they don't always make it that easy.
oh yeah. And they won't. I mean, right now we have a situation where, so for our branch, one of our members was working on organizing his workplace, and one big thing is they were going to do a march on the boss about, and they did, about masks. So it's a art cinema and a little art gallery space in Hartford, Connecticut, called the Real Artways. I will call them out now.
Hmm.
He ended up getting fired, and they did a little march on the boss to say, look, we want masks. We want to require masks of everyone at the front, in the front hallway, right where the front of house staff is. So when people interact with the front of house staff, they wear masks, and we want management to back us up. And they felt that management wouldn't. So he was fired on the spot, and the others were, of course, stressed out and scared, and that's kind of really thrown off his whole thing. We were planning on doing an action out, to pick it outside of it was going to be tonight. It was going to be
Oh,
some art show. Our art show is going to be on, up there is going to be premiere, but of course the event was canceled because it would have been a super spreader thing, and Hartford County has now made the city of Hartford, require masks at all businesses. So it's kind of a weird situation. But back and forth, the Real Artways reached out to our branch and was complaining about the post we made on Facebook, calling them out on this. And they
right.
said he wasn't fired because of this. He was fired for another reason. We can't get into it. And they actually can. Like, they can tell me, like, if he's a lying asshole, I'd like to know as the officer in his union, so I know he's not pulling our chain. But the reason they're
But
probably not going to tell me is they're going to be, shifty about it, is because they know what they did is probably problematic and potentially illegal, and therefore they don't want to admit what they did. And they're like, "Oh, well, no, we can't get into it." But what's great is they started the email with, "My parents were in the union, and my dad was a shop steward. I'm really pro union. I really love what you guys do, and for my progressive," it was like, go fuck yourself. It's like saying I have a black friend.
no,
It
yeah, yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
count.
Hey, listen, sweetie, okay? I have lots of union friends, all right? I'm so pro union, but yeah, I imagine it's
I'm not sexist. My mom was a woman. That makes me half woman, right? Whatever. It's fucking bullshit.
damn, your mom was a woman? Pog. Uh
No.
I obviously the power dynamic is really, really stacked against people unionizing right now. Which is why all the subterfuge, all of the hyper cautious defensive behavior. It's deeply unfortunate, and it's pretty broadly representative of how bad the situation is for us. But in your time doing what you do, how much success do you see? And I'm just saying, I know you rep for your org, but like, be honest, is this like a slow, painful death march, or do you think that with strong, hands-on, learned union advocacy, there's like a decent shot for at least a decent number of people to get unionized?
Uh, yeah, I mean, so it's tough. As long as I've been doing it and being part of the union as a whole, it's a tough slog.
Mhm.
So I mean, for instance, the IWW, it's been very difficult for us. Like compared to there's a lot of people in more established unions like the AFL-CIO, Teamsters, and whatnot, who probably look down upon the IWW, who see us as a bunch of larpers or cowboys and like a book club. And in a lot of instances, that happens. There are a bunch of IWW people who sign up online because you can, and they're often leftists. And they think they can just start spreading stuff, and that can be organizing. Or sometimes a branch will get together and they'll really just be a book club. Granted, I've been in communication with a lot of branches, definitely more than a handful, who are actually organizing their workplaces, who are actually getting their members trained, who are focusing on that. A lot of the people I talk to in the general executive board have that, and the organizing department, they're all behind us on that. And it all depends on getting trained and making sure that if, say, you're in a former general membership branch, the purpose of that branch is to help organize the working class. So you need to
Right.
make sure that everything you do is how are we going to help our workplace organizing? How do we encourage it? How do we enable it? How do we support it? And how do we keep it going afterwards? And building that infrastructure and talking to other branches helps you learn what that infrastructure needs to be. Okay, after a job branch goes public, right? Say we organize an Arby's here in Connecticut. Well, we got to make sure that we support them. So maybe members of the GMB are going to help those guys with, say, admin work.
Mhm.
It's all about the planning behind that. I think it's possible. It's definitely possible. You just can't go in it half cocked. You can't go in it not knowing what you're doing, and you have to understand that it's a bit of a struggle. You got to chip at it bit by bit by bit. But as long as you take that time to take a deep breath, know what you're going at, having a plan of attack, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. I think people just need to make sure they get the skills, get the training, and get the support they need. And whether that's from the IWW or the Teamsters or the farm workers, whatever, I'm pro union regardless. Except for a certain union with people with badges and guns. But
Yeah. Now, do you feel as though the way the online left agitates and propagates information and all the like, do you feel as though that actually sets people back with regards to acquiring and using the skills necessary to be a good union advocate?
Short answer, yes. And it depends. Different people are different. I think there is a tendency, again, online to go for that spicy meme attack and escalate. And some people are more left populists. There's certain big streamers and leftist, streamers and content makers who are very much like that. I'd say Kotlinski, he calls himself that.
Mhm.
Um, that kind of idea where people are very much more about the hot take and everything like that, and it builds a kind of hostile environment. Even if someone's a bit more moderate than you, suddenly they're unforgivable, and that kind of does not help because you have all this just shit going around, and it just makes it people don't feel as if they can approach to it. And it also goes, people sit there and talk big games about unions and we should do this and we should pass this bill and make it easier for unions, but that's not going to save everything unless the unions take advantage of that. Um, so I think it's definitely an issue and can be harmful. Example of this is a couple months back. So we have a system in our union in our branch where if you've never chaired a meeting before, and we chair it by Rusty's rules, we want you to chair 3 meetings in a row so you
Rusty's
can
rules?
understand what
Rusty's rules?
Rusty's rules of order. So basically how the meeting goes about, kind of like Robert's rules. So basically parliamentary procedure.
Okay.
And that's how our meetings go about. And so everyone kind of understands that. And this person who gets to chair is often a new member, someone who's been in there for a while, and they get to plan the agenda. I send them the agenda items. They put the agenda together, so they actually get some power to if we run out of time, they can put something at the bottom. Um, and it's really easy, and it helps them realize, oh, this stuff isn't that hard. I can step up. One of our members couldn't make it for a while because her other union, the nurses union, FSEIU, in Connecticut, was going to go on strike. They were planning a strike, nursing home strikes, because they weren't getting any support. This was nursing homes, rest homes, homes for people with disabilities, a
Mhm.
big thing. And it escalated. So they were about to go on strike. And the Wednesday, right after the day of our meeting, we found out that the governor of Connecticut, Governor Lamont, had signed an order having the National Guard be strike breakers.
A
So they were
classic.
just going to go and fill in the positions of the nurses.
The
Um,
National Guard.
the National Guard, Connecticut National Guard. And the strike was supposed to happen that Friday. Thankfully, a deal was made. But immediately after our meeting, I was in a meeting with a bunch of other people all around Connecticut with leftist groups and all this other stuff, including some jackass in the Green Party who I really hate. Um, but I'll get to it in a bit. Um, and we were talking about support. What can we do to support the union? And you could tell the people who had actual union background and the people who were just young leftists who had the heart in the right place but were a bit overeager. Those young leftists were like, "Oh my God, we got to bring them, stuff for tear gas and everything. These nurses are going to get their asses kicked." And we're like, "No, they're
Oh
not
my
strike breaking.
God.
They're not strike breaking like they did at the turn of the last century." Though I understand the fear.
That's
What they're
really
doing
embarrassing.
yeah, what they're doing, and thankfully, everyone who was a actual had union background stepped up and said no, including the guy from the Green Party who I hate, actually was able to step in and be like, no, that's not what we're doing. That's not what they're doing. Don't worry about it. Like we would have National Guardsmen and women serve, going in and acting as nurses for patients they don't know in conditions they're not trained for, and that is inherently dangerous. But they're not going to be going in there with tear gas and rubber bullets or live bullets and beating the shit out of striking nurses on a picket line. And you could see that disconnect, and that kind of disconnect is big. Now there's a lot of stuff peeled over. We didn't have to do any of that support because they got their demands and the National Guard didn't have to go in. But you could see that disconnect.
Can I
And I
ask
think
one quick
some of that
question?
online stuff happens. Oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
Somebody in chat asks, isn't it illegal for nurses to strike because it puts people's lives in danger?
It can be if they just go on random, like they just say we're on strike, they walk out. What happened is so part of these nursing homes and rest homes were going on strikes at different times because they need to actually arrange for people to come in
Oh,
and fill the
okay.
positions. That's
Gotcha.
part of actually a contractually the way they do it. They go, look, we're going to go on strike, and they go, okay, well, we'll have to call in temp workers. One of the issues where the National Guard had to be called in is because these homes didn't have any plans to get these temp workers in, and also everyone in the nursing profession was kind of, been pretty fucking busy over the past year and a half. So that was one aspect of it. So that's how that goes. It's a little thing about labor law, but valid concern.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's basically like how when you take a day off, sometimes the boss asks you to like find your replacement shift, except larger and more institutionalized. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd be a little sad if I was in the hospital after some injury and everyone didn't show up.
Yeah.
That would that would
Just for you,
negatively
they wouldn't
affect
show
my
up.
day. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, every other nurse shows up, just not the ones that were taking care of me. They're like, oh, well,
Yep.
Um, okay, that makes sense. I think I completely understand what you're getting at with this like online left versus union experience divide because I feel like pragmatism is something people have a lot of trouble with in the online left, and unfortunately like unionization is something where you collide brutally with the expectations of and necessities of practical work. There's really no room for like wacky larpy behavior, and man, the idea of like being in that room and beginning to talk about like rioting tactics, the thought is so strange to me. But I guess that's what people online are taught to an extent, isn't it? When leftists online like learn about stuff like this, they don't learn about the practicalities of fighting back against unjust systems so much as they learn about the history of the suppression of labor movements. And from that, you'd think that like all labor disputes turn into Pinkerton showing up to cap you in the back of the head. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so everything gets exacerbated to the highest possible level of imagined conflict, and and there's nothing to talk about anymore.
Yeah, it is this month is 100 years since Blair Mountain, the Battle of Blair Mountain. But just to remember, it's been 100 years since the Battle of Blair Mountain. That shit isn't happening as much, not in America. So there's definitely ways the boss comes down on you, and there's sometimes, yes, roughing up sometimes does happen with stuff like that. But yeah, it's not, it doesn't automatically go into that.
Yeah, and the assumption that it always will can sometimes make it really, really difficult to pull people over, it seems.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, well, that all tracks with me. Uh, chat, I'm looking at you now. I'm interested in what you want to know. So let me know what you want to know. And I guess while I'm waiting on them, how's your day been?
Um, Pretty good. Work went well. Was able to cut parts in the water jet, make everything pretty well. Came home. I have a friend who's being very vax reluctant. So and he's sending me all these weird conspiracy stuff, and I finally watched one of them, and I went like 30 minutes into it before I realized the man in the video was not a real doctor, and I've been taking I worked a bit on that today, my response to my friend, because I love and care for this man, and I don't want him to I don't want to be hostile to him, but I really want him to know that this guy's a grifter and he shouldn't, believe him. So I took some time to write on that, and I felt, what I wrote came out good, So,
Nice.
and then I played some Ion Fury and got my ass kicked.
Fair. Okay, we have some. First off, you're being asked, how does one educate themselves on what unions are nearby?
Um,
I assume
well,
what they mean is union resources, not the unions themselves.
um, there's always the best places just to look up for union locals. That's usually the simple thing, and figure out what unions are nearby. And Teamsters and a bunch of these other unions, like machinists unions, also have organizing. They have external organizing, so it's a bit of different way they go about organizing. But it's still a lot of valuable resources to say, hey, look, I'm thinking about organizing my workplace, and you guys are able to get good demands, and then you can reach out to their website or their numbers. But if you know that there's a local nearby, it actually helps and goes, okay, there's actually a physical presence, which will really be helpful.
Gotcha.
um that's one of
Um,
the best ways to do it.
uh, how can you try to unionize in a research setting? The labs all compete for funding nationally, and work is on a timeline, so a walkout isn't really feasible. I guess you could broaden this to like unionization in non-standard work environments.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the big thing, right? We talk about uh white collar jobs, right? Traditionally white collar jobs that are still work. They're still technically working class. They don't own the means of production, but it's a lot harder. Situations like that. That is definitely something I don't have a lot of, I wouldn't have a lot of experience in, but I know someone who's actually been talking about with lab assistants and people who do a lot of research stuff and how to get that. And that seems very similar to the struggle to get, say, what's the I'm looking for? Not contract workers, gig worker, the gig economy. I think there can be um, a lot of things you can learn from the efforts to organize the gig economy and how people have been working out and reaching out to them. I feel that it's not exactly the same, but the kind of freedom that one has in research and a lot of the stuff you deal with, and having research being all over and different labs competing with each other, is definitely something that may be able to compare and contrast.
Gotcha. Do you have any opinions on the NEA, the National Educators Association?
Um, well, it's a union, right?
That's nice.
So it is. It gets a lot. I mean, I think it does a lot of good work because there is organizing and they've been able to get a lot of demands. That being said, I think they could always do, and this is one of my big things with a lot of the traditional other unions like the AFL-CIO, and I try never to shit on them. Some people get really hostile towards them, and they get stuff done. I think they could always afford to be more militant, to put less of their efforts into political, electoral uh, efforts when possible, and putting more into saying actual uh, organizing on the ground, as well as promoting workplace democracy. Unions of any type, not just the IWW, but any union, is what the workers make out of it. It's what the members are. You're part of that union.
Hmm.
If you want to make sure that your union makes sure there's some kind of standard for craftsmanship, make sure that's a thing. Step up and be part of that. And I think the NEA needs to really work. I think still keep working with more militancy directly on the workplace, as well as making sure it fosters workplace democracy and union democracy, so it doesn't just all consolidate into a small group of people. And that's sometimes hard because teachers and other educators are highly overworked, so you kind of are too tired to want to go to a union meeting, but you want to make sure that you are facilitating that. So I think that'd be one great thing they could do.
Gotcha.
I think it's possible.
All right, a question from me then. In your experience, how amicable do Americans seem to be to pro-union talking points, whether they're phrased overtly or not?
I think a lot of people are. I've had some conversations with people in bars recently, which, not trying to organize them there, but the conversation comes up. And there's a lot of people that are pro union and they think unions are great and would love to do something about a union. And some people have had some bad experiences, some people have very hostile experiences, but others are very much like the idea of it, very much pro union. They definitely think certain other people deserve a union. Like they'll talk about Amazon and say, yeah, they definitely need a union. Um, but they always, when it gets to their own job, they kind of get hazy, and a lot of people do. But others are saying, "Hey, it'd be really cool. I just don't know how." I think a lot of people are amicable. It's just, it's all about again phrasing and their situation, their workplace, and their experiences. Some people may have had a bad experience with the union in the past, or have had a workplace where they've never really needed one, or they feel their workplace isn't conducive to one.
A follow through
These
on
are all
that.
things that can be addressed.
A
Yeah.
follow through on that. How do you know if you're in or are being sold on a bad union?
Hmm. Well, if you're a cop and you're in a union, you're being sold on a bad union. No, it's definitely it's one where if for instance, if your union or your union local isn't listening to people, is not one where you feel that you and your fellow workers on the shop floor have a vote, have a say, and as a bunch of members, you feel that your leadership isn't being conducive, that's not ideal.
Hmm.
You don't want that. You remember, you are the union, and so your leadership isn't conducive to that. That means, rare case, that person's inherently just bad, or something has happened in the past that has calcified this kind of bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy is only calcified in all these unions because we let it. That's part of the reason we allow that to calcify. So as long as you can break that free and resist it and build more, work union democracy and feedback and feel that they're being responsive. That's, I think, if you feel, oh, this isn't responsive, I don't feel like represented, I don't feel like they have my back, then you're probably not in the best union.
To an extent, that's also in part because of a lack of competition, right? If unions were more popular in this country, not literally competition, but at least access. If unions were more popular in this country, people would be more aware of them and what they should be. It would be easier to push back against bad unions because we would have a better image of what a good union is. There'd be more
Yeah.
people willing to step up and make good unions as well.
Yeah.
No, it is a problem.
Mhm.
Let's see. We have some people in chat who are asking the kind of questions that remind me of the leftists who talked about strike breaking tactics at the nurses strike.
Well, let's do it. Let's get controversial.
More pie in the sky. Stuff about how to unionize the military, which I I mean, if you'd like to take a shot at answering that one.
I mean that's absolutely legal. Now, it's there. The military can't join technically any soldiers union, but theoretically, soldiers and sailors and airmen and marines and coast guardsmen and women could all join the IWW because it's technically an industrial union, not a craft union or a trade union. But there's a wonderful what is the documentary called Sir No Sir. That's about basically the resistance of rank and file troops against the war in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really good example for how do you organize the military, and that's a really good way to start it. And granted, of course, if we had a military that really, was ready to go on strike if they thought a war was really stupid or, there was no deadline, that would definitely be a problem,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So, to the military industrial complex, but it would definitely stop us from going to pointless fucking wars.
Okay, fair. Um, See, how do you sign up for the IWW? Like the actual process of going on the website. What's expected of you?
Well, what's what's expected of you is is just to fill out the form. There's a nice little link that says IWW membership. I'll share with you, and you can share with your chat. Hey, it's pretty easy. It just says join today. Um, and if it goes on about the practical benefits, it'll ask different things about it. Remember, if you are a student, you can sign up. If you are unemployed or retired, you can sign up. Um, you just have to put, when they ask for organization, you can say retired or unemployed currently. That's fine. They're not going to hassle you for any of that. And you'll be, all your stuff will be processed. You'll get your red card sent to you, and you will get your access to the GOB referendum. And hopefully they will put you in contact with the nearest branch. I know when the moment I get the email about, a new worker in our area who's joined up, I send an email right away saying, hey, do you want to get in contact? And we'd love to, have you be someone we, work with, that kind of stuff. So they know that, whether they respond or not, that's on them. But I try to make sure I get there as soon as possible.
So you're saying people should sign up because they can make friends?
Yes, that's one way.
Oh,
That's one reason they sign up.
not necessarily a bad way either.
Mhm.
Let me see. Do they have any tips for healthcare workers that are being mistreated due to the COVID crisis? I think that's a good one.
Yeah. Especially it also, I just saw the question. Scroll up, especially how not to be fired for unionizing. Again, big thing about the training is keeping an eye out, making sure you're being subtle, reaching out to people. If you can carpool with someone, that's the best way to do it. I'd say you got to make sure that you get as many people on the same page. And one big thing is make sure people make kind of public statements about, hey, I think we should definitely make sure that everyone's wearing a mask, or hey, I think we need more support from people, who are management or the owners or everyone else here when we have to deal with this. And we want to make sure that you have our back. And being able to just have multiple people, like even if it's just 5 people coming up to the management saying, hey, I just want to know, can you have our back for this? I'm really stressed out. And they have them work on a little script, right?
Mhm.
Or just have them kind of say something. They'll all have different variations, so it won't sound exactly the same. But they'll make it seem like they're not being too pushy, and they'll just say, look, I really would love if we could just look at, mask wearing here, or make sure that everyone's wearing a mask, or see what we're doing about people who aren't wearing masks. And I just really want your support, because it gets really hostile with these people. And you say that, and then your coworker says something similar to that, and it keeps going. And that way the boss kind of knows something's up. And then eventually, if nothing happens, you then can organize a potential march on the boss. But the little things like that make them go, oh, this is an issue. I should probably stop this before it gets worse.
So, as a general rule, deferring to collective action is a good way of insulating yourself against what would otherwise be the consequences of stepping against your boss.
Yeah, exactly. The more you all stand up together, it becomes harder for them to retaliate, especially if it's more than just one person. If they can't identify a leader as well, that makes it tough for them.
Mhm.
And you have that collective action to go, oh, this is a bunch of people. If I fire all of these people, I'm down. Like, I'm screwed. This is really bad. If I fire all these people for marching, all 20 of these people for marching in my office and demanding that I accept their terms, and or demand that I make, changes for how we have policies for certain things, it's going to look bad. They'll try to target who they think are the leaders, which is why you do everything you can under the radar, so you and the other potential leaders aren't ID'd.
Mhm.
So
What do I do?
apes together strong.
What if I do if I'm already part of the IWW, but there are no branches near me?
Right. Well, I would do everything I can to get in contact with the organizing training committee and see if you can get into an organizer training. We're still doing a lot of them online. And a lot of times they have people pop in who aren't part of any branch, so that they can pop in and take part in the training. We have one coming up in October. I think we're doing it with Salt Lake City. And I'm sure, we're going to have some people who are not just in our branch, but IWW adjacent that we know of. And I'm sure that the organizing training committee will send some uh, orphaned wobblies our way, and that's absolutely fine. So I make sure you keep reaching out to them, and GHQ, be patient if you can, um, about getting that training. I think that's step one.
Gotcha.
After you get that training, then potentially you can think about reaching out to other people trying to form a general membership branch or trying to organize your workplace, but making sure you get the support there from the organizing department board to do that. And then building up from there so that you actually can have the IWW have some presence in your area. But make sure you get that training first, because the training isn't just good about how to organize your workplace, but it's good at how to organize your branch. Like everything I learned for that has helped me with my own branch, making sure that we are something and we're constantly relevant and we're not just we don't fall into being a little book club, that we actually are working on things and we're making sure everyone has tasks and we're making sure we're making progress to our goals. So
Gotcha. What is the IWW doing to boost its membership after decades of declining support?
well, some of us are going on popular streamers, bearded streamers streams to get the word out. um Oh, a lot of things. So, a lot of branches do different things. We try to, we have an agitprop committee. So for, agitation propaganda. So we've been working on having little campaigns where we're spreading out, flyers and posters. Sometimes it's going to shows with a literature table and having that set up. Granted, that's not happening a lot now because of COVID.
Right.
Sharing stuff online with saying a Facebook presence. I try to make sure that for Connecticut that our Facebook for our branch is very pro-union. It's often trying to give people solutions, letting people know what's going on in the IWW and throughout labor, as well as other issues. And that makes people go, oh, this is a thing, and keeping people updated on what the IWW does. Sharing those stories as well, so people go, oh, hey, because that's how we build that strength. The moment people see another workplace somewhere getting organized, like Burgerville Workers or Voodoo Donuts, you go, hey, maybe we can get our place organized.
I
That's not a bad, and they
didn't
get
know Voodoo
involved.
Donuts organized.
Yes, Voodoo Donuts did organize, and has been organizing, and that's a big thing because I think at one point the heat. This is a big thing that happened recently. There was a heat issue, right? And it was so hot, like it was hotter inside the shop than it was outside, and people walked in. They had a heat related strike basically because people would walk in and customers would just go, yep, nope, and fuck right off. And the frosting was melting off of donuts, which you don't want, especially within the shop.
Right.
So they've been doing and working on that, I know for sure. And so it's definitely a process, but you see those, you share these stories and you're communicating, you're reaching out, and one goal is the goal of IWW delegates is to reach out and talk to people and get them signed up. And people see this and they go, oh, that's the best way. But I mean, the best way is we can successfully organize places. We talk about that, we're loud, we're proud about those successes, and what we're doing, and people then go, oh, that's cool, we can join up and I got to start organizing my workplace. And that's the system that we have to go with. um
How big does a workplace have to be before it's reasonable to attempt any kind of union action?
I mean, a union is two or more workers who get together to improve their conditions. That is the legal definition in the country. We actually have a more the IWW, the U.S. is a better labor definition than, say, even Canada to a degree. That's it. If you have one person who's the boss and it's you and someone else the employee and you're being treated like shit, you two employees can form a union. You can. It's really small, but you can. If it's a mom and pop shop and there's 5 employees, that's worth organizing, all of it. It's one thing the IWW does focus on really well. If you got that mom and pop shop and there's just 5 of you, some of the big unions might, not see it as a big thing for them to go with. But, we will say that and say, here's the skills, here's the training, here's how you do it. Because those jobs matter just as much. A small business owner, even of a mom and pop shop, can be just as much of a tyrant as Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. People often overlook that because, in terms of absolute influence and harm, I mean, of course, multi-billionaire CEO is going to outstrip any mom and pop shop. But in terms of the actual effect on the lives of a worker, um, yeah. In fact, I think that a disproportionate amount of wage theft takes place at those smaller places, in part because the lowered expectation for professionality or professionalism leads to sort of more leeway with wage theft, and also because the business owners essentially take advantage of a parasocial relationship. Um,
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
They always
or,
go, "Oh,
we're
we're family here."
struggling, we can't pay you right now, I'm so sorry, that kind of thing, you know?
Exactly. Though we're a big family here. I thought we were family, all this stuff like that. Some of our workers that did this was many years ago. We weren't even an official branch. They did that, and the bosses had tried to play that relationship up with some of the workers, because oh, I helped you fix up your house and everything, and the guy had thankfully gone through inoculation training to be prepped for that. But they try to pull that, and sometimes people fall prey to that themselves because oh, I know this guy and we're really close and all. It's like, look, they're really close, but in that position, you're an employee, they're the boss, and they should be treating you better. And that's it's hard, and we fall prey to that all the time. It's something we just need to be aware of.
Yeah. Okay, I completely agree with that. Let me see. Let me look through. Mostly people making fun of dishonest business owners. They look past that. Somebody asks something that I can answer. If you live in a right-to-work state, is unionizing possible? Yes, I'm happy to say. Otherwise, unionizing would be quite impossible all over the place.
Yes, it's tough, but it's possible. Like for instance, there'll be a second chance for the Bessemer, uh, a warehouse in Alabama. Um, so
How often do you work with unions abroad?
um, personally, I don't. I'm mostly dealing with Connecticut and a bunch of other branches, but I have, chatted, I think, a couple times with some of the branches. I know IWW does have branches in all over, so in some in Ireland and some in Great Britain. And it's been really interesting to talk to some of them. I think there were a couple from Great Britain that were doing some organizing that came over, and we had a good chat with them and about their struggles. But usually I don't. But as a whole, I know the IWW does have relations with groups like CMT and all those unions as well. They're not like a full like alliance or in the massive international federation right now, but I know that there's relatively good relations and communication.
Okay.
As far as I know, unless there's been some secret beef that I'm unaware of.
Maybe, who knows? I I
Yeah.
am I imagine that it's pretty difficult sometimes to work directly under those circumstances, in large part because the conditions for unionizing are so different between these countries, you know? Like general tactics are probably universal, but in terms of what you have to overcome, that has got to vary unbelievably so.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's different from different countries. People are just used to it, and that does help. And also a big thing like trade federations. So here's one thing that's been brought up. I know because it's something that's been in the online leftist space. Well, some of it. The absurd idea for October strike.
Ah,
Or
yes, I was going to ask you that myself.
let's do it. I would actually willing. I've actually so every once in a while I've been reminding you on Discord like, hey, just make sure we set this up. I think I was kind of drunk one time, but I said, hey, I really just want to beat the shit out of all these kids asking for October strike. Um, so calling for a general strike is a grand thing, and if you do it, you're a jackass because general strikes, effective ones, at least in this country, aren't called. They just happen. The
uh-huh.
Seattle general strike just happened way back in the day. So in other countries, union federations, they call general strikes, and part of it's a political flex to show that they still have power, to show that they're members, because you can have people in a workplace, in the same workplace, doing similar things, but some people are part of one union, the other people are part of another, and that one trade union they're part of will then a trade union federation will then call their own strike to kind of show members, hey, look what we can do. So that's part of their little flex. So that's part of something that goes. One of the reasons like the approach to unionizing is kind of different in different countries, as the U.S. doesn't really have those competing trade union federations where they're using a general strike as a flex to just recruit more members. It's a bit more complicated than that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's part of the reason what happens with general strikes. But yeah, usually if you want to strike, you should probably like be organized and be in a union. And it's been really interesting to observe and go online and checking these spaces to seeing people talking about this. And there's no like leadership. There's no people with any
Yeah,
organizing
this
experience.
is the thing that always gets me. It seems like it's kind of the ultimate virtue signal because because you get to feel like real big and powerful, flexing your chest, talking about how, oh yeah, general strike, we're going to do it. Now, there's absolutely no way something like that could happen without some kind of groundwork or organization. And if you do it without that, all you're going to do is engender passivity and make people feel like shit. If you get people really, really, really psyched up about the possibility of a general strike because they don't really know the logistics of planning such a thing, and then it doesn't work, all you're really doing is cementing in people's minds the idea that unionizing is a waste of time, and so are strikes, because it just doesn't work, you know?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And they go on this stuff, and there's one person going, "Well, we don't only 10% of American workers are unionized. We outnumber them, so we just need to get everyone else involved." It's like, well, if you could get them organized, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Some people have this weird arrogance to it because the people go, "Where are the unions?" And they have this huge arrogance because they don't know how to talk to their coworkers, they don't know how to organize. They think that, oh, if you go out and you walk out on your job, you're on a strike, you're protected. Well, you know what? You're still going to get fired. And sure, it may be illegal, but guess what? If you're the only one to walk out of your job and you say, "I was on strike, I was doing this, it was an October strike," they're still going to fire you. Sure, you can apply to the National Labor Relations Board and get an unjust labor practice, but guess what? You're probably going to lose that case, and you'll be down a bunch of money because you walked out. And if you have a bunch of you walked out and you had a bunch of people organize your workplace, yes, you'd actually would have a union, and you'd actually would have an argument. You'd be able to win. You could have some power there. But you just walk out, and there's a bunch of people that may walk out on this thing, if they do at all, on the 15th or the 10th or whenever, and they're going to lose their jobs, which it'll be fantastic for everyone who's left adjacent, because it'll show what a great movement this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's absurd. You need to have unions to back you up. You need to support them. And you can't just tell people, because these people have been going into the IW spaces, even other union spaces as well, and saying, "Hey, you guys should join us." Well, strikes are organized by our members, our workers who are part of a union. It's a collective democratic process. We have a discussion, we vote on it. None of us had any input, let alone voted on the date or the demands or how long.
Mm-hmm.
It totally ignores everything we've been doing and everything the Teamsters and the UE and farm workers and teachers have been doing and how our struggles are. And then you come here, this small group of young leftist kids, and say, "Hey, you should all do exactly what we're doing. We need your support. We can't do this without you." It's like, I know. That's why you probably should be part of labor, be labor involved and understanding what we're doing. And it's absurd. And then people keep then spouting bullshit like, "Oh, they need to represent the workers. They're too corrupt. They're in the pockets of management now, all these officers." Well, maybe you actually don't represent these members as well. And you can't say that we're failing to represent workers when you're saying that you're representing everyone and demanding people go. That's vanguardist bullshit. And that really only works unless you're a violent, psychopath, like, a couple of folks in Russia about 100 or so years ago. So, then you could be your vanguard and drag people
They'll
with
call
the
you a
gun.
radlib for this, you know.
Yeah. Fuck the tankies. I argue with the tankies all the time. But yeah, no, it's just, that's how that happens. So again, the good thing is all these little online leftists, I know they're not good shots. So, yeah, it's
No,
just,
I principally agree with absolutely everything that you have to say. It really seems like there are a lot of people who are disillusioned without organization. They have no idea how to properly use their education or their political, motivation. So what they do is they engage in meaningless virtue signaling and drag down people who actually engage with the tragically incremental but nonetheless worthwhile process of actually fixing things.
yeah. Oh yeah. And it's, I like to call some of them, I like to call imperial leftists. It's a playoff of, was it 1840s? They had the dynastic left. So during the revolution of the 1840s, you had leftists that really just wanted, they wanted bread and jobs. They didn't care about political liberties and rights and democracy. They thought that was all bourgeois bullshit. And they didn't care if the king stayed. And I like to say that now, because we have in America the idea of the imperial presidency, where the executive branch has gotten more and more power, both abroad and at home.
Mm-hmm.
You have leftists who just fall into that and think that, oh, had we voted Bernie, it doesn't matter if we lost the House, the Senate, Bernie would be able to snap his fingers and do everything. They have no idea. They don't care about democracy or other stuff. They just want someone to use executive power to force their issues. And you end up falling into that, where you go to either platitudes or just falling into kind of populist bullshit, and that populist stuff can always swing either way.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
some populist stuff, economic populism, can be worded in a way that's very left wing and pro worker, or be very nationalistic and xenophobic.
Yeah,
It's that
no,
knife's edge. You want to avoid it.
I agree 100%. How do you suggest people try to get non-leftists into explicitly leftist unions like the IWW? I feel like the IWW is going to be like scary for some people, right?
Yeah. Well, one big thing is to be honest. When someone goes, "Hey, it says here you're trying to overthrow capitalism," there can be, between the working class and the employing class, there's nothing in common. It's stuff's blatant right there in the preamble of our Constitution. But you be honest and say, look, I think you say, look, this isn't going to happen overnight. It's not going to be like a big violent thing where we all grab AKs and just take over everything. It's a process. We believe in building that better world in the shell of the new world in the shell of the old. So you want to talk to people, get them involved in that. The best way is to literally just say, this is what our union is going to do for our workplace. This is the direct stuff that we can do, and to talk about those immediate benefits to your workplace and your life, and getting them working that way and saying, look, with the union, this is how we can go about it. That's one of the best ways. It's the same way when people talk about, the IWW being very white, predominantly, not exclusively. But yeah, you've got a lot of, because again, leftists can just sign up. So a lot of, young white male leftists with beards. But you
Sheesh,
just
don't
start
hold
organizing the
on,
workplace.
don't fucking circular firing squad here. Calm down, calm down.
Hey, I got a mustache and a little west of my beard stash coming in too, and I'm rather alabaster, so that's
Okay,
it's a
gotcha.
hit at me as well.
Okay,
But yeah, no, it's
I
just
give you
about
the
making
H
sure,
word pass.
yeah, making sure the workplace is organized and building that and saying, hey, here's what we can do here, and try to talk about the here and now and the immediate stuff that you guys can gain. And I think that's definitely a good way to get involved. I like to talk about how we are, run by the workers, and most unions can be, but we emphasize that, and how we are the union, we are the branch. The workplace is going to make the job branch that you form with your fellow workers. That's going to be the one to call the shots. I'm not going to sit there in the Connecticut branch as an officer and tell you you need to strike unless you want to be on that strike, right? I'm not going to force you to do that. We're going to back you up. We're going to have your support, but you guys take the lead. You guys call that. If you want to make sure that you're at a woodworking shop and that everyone has had so many years as an apprentice beforehand, that's on you. That's a fine thing to do. Give some quality, be proud, union label right there. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. It's mostly just talking about democracy, about the ability for you guys to do stuff and control your path and the immediate gains you'll get. And that really helps people. That helps people go, oh yeah, because a union has won this for me. I have this because of this. I got to spend a vacation in the summer with my family for a week. We get to go hiking, as a family, and that's great. That's because of a union, and being able to force those and talk, force people to kind of see what those are.
It
And
seems like it seems like if there was a way to summarize, it would basically just be don't be conceited and don't think you're better than the people you're trying to talk to.
yes, you need to love the people around you and be part of that working class. Never talk down to them. Never think because, oh, you read, Lenin and Marx and Engels, that somehow you're better, because you're not. You're just a worker just like them. And you need to understand that they have concerns. They will be, oftentimes people have legitimate concerns. I brought this up to someone about healthcare, about when people say, how do we pay for it? Like universal healthcare.
Mhm.
Remember, the people who always say, oh, we can't pay for it and sustain it, blah, 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 the people who came up with those talking points, sure, they were in bad faith. But the person you're probably going to be talking to that asked that question is asking it in good faith and truly does care. Like, they might actually care about spending and stuff like that. So you have to be able to deal with that argument. So when you're talking with someone in the workplace, organizing, you got to make sure that their concerns, their fears, what matters to them, you actually listen to it and you understand them. And you don't have to like your coworkers and be best friends with them, but you do have to love them as a person, as a human being, as a fellow worker, and want the best for them, and make sure that their concerns are valid. They may have family issues that, may have to take precedence, and listen to that, be understanding about that. It's a lot of empathy. that's required, and sometimes that's exhausting.
Yeah,
But
I imagine,
necessary.
especially given the current, you know, political climate and people's default attitudes towards these subjects. I imagine that often the conversations you're going to have are really fucking frustrating.
Yeah, and it's always have that human element to it. Don't ever make it feel like we're pushing. I want to push to be the union because I think this is it. It's a best thing for the world and America and everything. Remember, people are more likely to join you in the union if they do feel that you really just want to make life better at the workplace, and make sure that you want to make life better at the workplace. That's it, and that helps. That connection helps. It makes you have that bond, and it moves on from there. Uh, so
Okay.
take it, but
That
take it easy.
that absolutely tracks. Um oh, quick question from my end. Can my YouTube editors unionize?
Yes,
Shit.
yes.
Okay, don't say anymore. Thank you.
Uh,
Um
are you gonna pull a you? Well, what's his name? Nathan Jr.
Nathan
J.
Robinson,
Robinson.
you saw that?
Yeah, I've never really liked that guy because he seems pretentious, but I've
Well,
read it.
his
That's
clothing
again my
is,
issue.
yeah, pretty.
Yeah, no, in some of the other stuff in there, and he got kind of weird toxic stuff in platforming, some weird people. And granted, some of the articles I've actually read from him aren't that bad. Again, that's why I think I'm trying not to be on Twitter or anything because I think people can always say really stupid shit on Twitter, and that's part of their opinions. So I think he kind of, definitely bit that, but that's definitely his own little problem. But yeah, they can organize as well. So
Yeah, it seems like he did a big Facebook post where he basically said like, "Oops, I did a fucky wucky. Oops," like it the way he phrased it really made it seem like he just got really drunk and sad one night and like did all of it. Like it's very like, "Oh no," like that kind of stuff, you know?
yeah,
Which is really fucking funny, I have to admit. Um Yeah, I think he's bringing people back on. I don't know what the future is going to look like for that. It looks pretty fucked, like membership
yeah.
wise.
Yeah, I think they wanted it from a worker co-op, and he was just, I think, got really attached, and sometimes that happens. And again, there are people like that Real Art Waste place in Hartford. There are people who see themselves as really, really progressive. And was it Phil Oakes said the American liberal, 10 degrees left of center, good times, 10 degrees right of center when it affects them personally. And that's pretty much what happens a lot with progressives and liberals and even people who call themselves socialists is the moment something is a threat to their power and the way they go about things, they'll get really defensive and they'll become anti-union
Yeah, I mean
or even worse.
it's material conditions, right? This is the reason why it's important to rail against systems and not individuals. Even if you have the best people imaginable in charge of, the capitalist economy, invariably they will eventually shift, most of them at least, towards defending the status quo because it's in their interest to do so. That's why you can never rely we can't have like good capitalists take over and then everything will be fine. It's not that simple. I think if
Yeah,
anything, Nathan Robinson's behavior is a really, really stark reminder of how susceptible people are to this kind of
yeah,
behavior. Because ideologically, I'm sure he's sincere when he talks about his belief in unionization and worker cooperatives. I don't think he was lying when he said any of that. I just think that, like, fundamentally humans act in self-interest and that capitalism does not incline people to, you know, act out of self-interest when it comes to the well-being of their workers.
yeah, it's accumulation of wealth. You could actually argue though that he's actually, when he fired everyone, he was being a good capitalist. He wasn't being a good person or someone sticking with his ideals, but he was being as a capitalist good because he was protecting his little interest of control. That's You can be a good capitalism but not be a good person. And those they're not the same thing.
Certainly not. Some people see unions as more work, that they just want to punch in and punch out and forget about it at the end of the day. What would you say to, if you were talking with a prospective union member, what would you say to convince them off of that point?
Well, I'd say think about how tiring, exhausting work can be, how much you get paid from that job, how often, sometimes, especially if you're in the service industry, schedules get violated because they didn't plan everything out. at the end of the day, yeah, it'd be great if you can have a bunch of days where you can go about your work week, do your job, do everything well, provide great service, do it well or get it done, go home and relax and do whatever you want with your own free time. That's great. That's one of my goals, that you can go about your life and live it. But without a union to make that working life bearable, we spend so much time at work that we need to make it bearable, especially for those of us who now we have an issue with everyone who can work from home, trying to work from home and wishing they can stay from home, how we're supposed to adjust the work week. These conversations are good, primarily amongst white collar employees. But for those of us who have to work in a physical space that we have to go to every day, those conditions and how we can make that better, how we can make that bearable, how we can make sure we're treated with dignity and respect, how we make sure you're paid really well, how we can make sure that you have, whether it's healthcare, whether workplace safety, that's still an issue in many workplaces, stuff like that, sick leave, things like that, and those benefits, sometimes a nice, decent stuff that a lot of businesses take for granted and do anyway, even without a union, which is great. Those things required a union to get to that point, and making sure that the union is there to protect what you have, or to make sure that you're not going to get, you're not going to be jerked around. That's vital. So to make sure that you can actually sit there and clock out of your job and go home and enjoy the rest of your day and say, hey, I'm going to have dinner with my family, and hey, I might help my son with his homework. But if you're too tired to help your kid with his math homework, and he's struggling and you're just exhausted, you say, I just want to sit down and zone out, I can't do anything, and it causes your partner and you to have a disagreement because work is being too stressful. Well, a union would be a great thing to make sure that your work isn't stressing you out, so it doesn't infect with this negativity the rest of your life. You don't want that to happen. You and your family, or whoever you're with, that's absurd. You
I
want to make
agree.
sure that you can enjoy the time off.
100%. Apparently David Packman's in chat. Is that actually
Hello, David Packman.
David Packman? Huh, son of a bitch. It's
Well,
actually
I can
David
have him
Packman.
invite me on his thing. I can just become famous now. I'll quit my real job and
Howdy, David. Um, uh, knocked me off my train of thought a little bit. Yeah, no, chat, this is a Q&A from you guys. What are we, help me out here. If you're fired for trying to organize, any tips for things you could use as evidence of unlawful firing?
always, always, always keep a workplace diary. Always keep a workplace diary for what you're doing. You should just do it anyway. As you're organizing, you can point out shitty stuff they did to coworkers or yourself. You can say, "Hey, I did this. Hey, and you can also have an organizing diary. Hey, I talked to this person at this point." So you can then draw a clear line from what the boss did and how they retaliated to things that you did, and you can say, "Look, here's evidence. This is what I did," and it becomes very obvious if that happens. It also is really great when you go public, and stuff like that. So you can say, "Hey, the boss did this at this time. We've been recording all this stuff as well." There are bosses who record, the behavior of us all the time. Checking bathroom breaks, putting cameras up, and everything. Might as well record their behavior with a diary. So that helps. That's always a big thing to do.
Gotcha. All right, that makes a lot of sense to me. We're coming up on. Oh, actually, we've managed to exceed an hour here. Do you have any big hard hitting points that you think you'd like to end on?
Oh, how to put this?
Mhm.
The work to organize your workplace. Make sure you get trained, whether it's for the IWW or any other union. If you join up, try to get through that organizer training as much as possible. Make sure you get in touch with your branch. Know what you're doing before you start. Have an understanding of that, and make sure that you realize there's a lot of work that has to go into it. There's work for all of this. You have to put in the work. You can't just jump on that and say, "Hey, we're going to make a bunch of memes and share stuff and agitate and build awareness in 2 months' time for a general strike, quote unquote." That falls apart. That's absurd. You need to make sure you put the work in, but take time for yourself. Don't kill yourself over it. We're building this for everyone, right? And your safety and livelihood and mental health is also important. So be able to put the work in, be able to commit to it, and know that you and your coworkers and the people around you are worth it. But make sure that you also don't overload yourself. That's important. Whenever you can, take steps to mitigate things. to make the world a better place. Try to be understanding, have some empathy for the people around you. Listen while you build that empathy. That can help your coworkers who may be a bit more, say, conservative than you, build empathy with coworkers that are different from them. And by building that empathy and that connection, that's how you do it. People who in these democratic unions may start organizing are going to have more understanding, where they're going to start talking to a coworker who is a person of color and realize that, oh yeah, restrictions on hair are kind of fucking stupid. And it's by having that empathy, they'll be able to understand that and realizing it's a workplace issue. And the same thing, they'll start to have empathy with LGBTQ plus, coworkers bit by bit. It may not take as quick as you'd like, but that empathy is going to be built there. When you give that positive vibe, I don't mean to sound like a hippie when I say positive vibes. You build that. You build that structure. Have some kind of rules of the road. You cannot build a revolution. It's like building a house. You build a house with unsafe or toxic materials. Don't be shocked that everyone in that house gets lead poisoning and it collapses. You want to make sure that you're building, the better world in, the shell of the old. So try to have that empathy, that understanding, that democracy, that open-mindedness, and help people feel like they can get involved. And that's going to help them spread that to other people and be more understanding.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on and spreading the good word.
Yes. Thank you for having me on again. If David Packman wants to have me on, he can, and I can talk to all those people.
He's busy with the ongoing lawsuit between the two of us.
Oh no. Yeah, thanks. I also want to say, good job on the Charlie Kirk, I would say, discussion.
Yeah,
that was
I think
interesting.
he wanted to debate, but he seemed rather cowed, and ended
I
up
think he went at it really well.
submitting to a discussion, which I won't complain about. Thank you. I'm happy with my performance as well.
Also, the little review you did about the Sigma male and female videos. I popped that. I laughed so hard with the beginning of the Sigma female. I was like, maybe I am a Sigma female, and I'm out for blood and vengeance, because my God, I lost my mind on that one. Oh.
Yeah, it was funny as fuck. I cannot believe people consume that shit unironically. It's actually extremely distressing,
Yes. Well, I will get out of your hair. I know you want to play some Metro Last.
Oh,
So.
You know me too well. Thank you, seriously, for coming on.
Okay. Have a good one, Vosh, and have a good one, everyone, and be safe.
Farewell.